Hey everybody, welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. This is our show where we shine a spotlight on leadership in public service, and we have deep conversations about sustainability and how we create a thriving future for our cities. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. Today's guest is Jeff Jenkins. He is the Deputy City Manager of Taylor, Texas. Taylor is undergoing a tremendous amount of growth in what we would probably call a historic moment in their town, and he really helps us understand how they're navigating this change. And what I love is what Jeff brings to the table in terms of how we show up as an authentic leader. How do we show up as ourselves? And we're not trying to be something we're not. We're authentically leading from who we are. It is such a deep conversation. And you're going to want to stick around and find out how chocolate cake can pretty much solve every problem you deal with in public service. You're going to have so much fun with this interview. Thank you for joining us today on Leading Thriving Cities. Jeff, thank you so much for being on Leading Thriving Cities, man. You and I have connected a lot over the last year or two. You're at the city of Taylor, and I've had a blast working with your team and getting to know y'all. And you bring a very unique perspective to things. You have a storyteller's heart, and so I'm excited to kind of tap into that today. So, you've been a deputy city manager now for quite a while, and so what's one thing you really wish people understood about that role in public service?
Sure, great question, Chad. I think overall, thinking about it, I think maybe a two-step approach on it.
Yeah.
Generally, I think that I wish the public kind of knew a little bit more about local government and understanding about the impactful things that we do each and every day. And so I guess taking a step back, just kind of I think we kind of take things for granted at times in the public that, hey, that always happens or somebody's going to take care of it.
Yeah.
But there's dedicated professionals that are out there each and every day living that experience. And we should take a step back and maybe have a little bit more understanding of that.
They don't understand the complexity of it, do they? Like just keeping the water on.
That's
they don't
correct.
get how much work that is.
That's correct. Yeah. It's quite, I think we need to go back to our 9th grade, 10th grade government classes, start from there. And
we need civics classes
earlier,
earlier. Yeah.
And of course, as professionals, working on part of our role should be educating public, because there's some really strong managers in this field and professionals in all fields of local government, and we need to be sharing that story and how we're making a huge impact. The second thing on my role, being a deputy city manager, it kind of plays into what I talked about earlier, just familiarity of what is a deputy city manager. Some people think I'm a police officer at times when they hear that title.
Is there a badge that comes with deputy city manager?
Not that I'm aware of. I'll need to ask my boss
you should just walk in tomorrow wearing one and
wear
see
the badge,
how he responds.
yeah. But they get puzzled, and but I love the title and everything I do. But there's a confusion. So again, thinking about from the general public, there are professionals that are behind the scenes. They're trying to improve the quality of your life. They're worrying about things that you don't even need to worry about, because they're taking care of business. Yeah. And there's a lot of little, at least on my role, problem solving. There's that is probably one of the biggest things.
Every minute, isn't it?
A new one every minute. Yeah. Complexities that you haven't thought about, but there's great people that are behind the scenes trying to figure those things out, make your life better, and it's a very worthwhile, enjoyable career. But I wish people knew a little bit. There's more of that assumption, hey, it's just going to happen. But there's some good people making a difference.
Is there an assumption sometimes? Because I think they don't know how things work behind the scenes. They know when they're not happy. They know when something doesn't go the way it normally goes, right? And they come and they don't understand, hey, we're really good at what we do, and we're here to serve and make your life better. There's a partnership aspect there.
Right.
And I think we can lose track of that on the city side. I think there's times we can get bogged down in just the task list and the amount of things we got to do and the weight of it, and I got an angry citizen across from me. We can lose sight of, hey, my job here is to partner with you to actually make your life better. And I think the citizen on the other side doesn't really understand that either. And is it you've had a long career now in public service. How have you held on to that passion for that partnership and that willingness to serve and make lives better?
Oh, I enjoy it each and every day. I mean, it's and what you're talking about is like a trust alignment. That's what I
Yes.
think of it
Yeah.
as, from the general public
Yeah.
and your citizens, and then also with your council. But end of the day, I always look at it as you're trying to make lives better for folks. And what's something that's more impactful and exciting
Yeah.
than doing that each and every day? Hey, I get to work on this. Maybe it might be a minor little piece of something, but it turns out to be a huge difference to grandma that's living, been living there for 40 years, or a
Yeah.
new resident. It's just that's what energizes me, is thinking about those
Yeah.
things. I know specifically in Taylor, our team, with a lot of the development that's occurred there, that's been monumental and
Y'all are going through a
historic.
massive change, right?
There-
Historic is a good word, right? This doesn't happen every day.
It does not, and Taylor, at the time when I started, it was we had opportunities in the past, and we missed those opportunities. And now Taylorites are growing up here, but they don't have the full potential to have the 360 of their livelihood spent in Taylor, from being born to your school years, and then coming back to have a career and raise a family.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very impactful, that to be a part of a team that says, okay, we want to change that script. We want it to where Taylorites can thrive and have those advantages and livelihood to stay in their town, and to be able
That's
to work on
huge.
that is huge and impactful generationally.
Yes, it really is. And you guys, when you started at Taylor 8.5 years ago, how big was it roughly?
Oh, it was probably about 16,000. We've grown a little bit, but
But really, it's not the historic piece of this is not how much you've grown since then. It's how much is about to happen.
That's correct. Yeah, it's and then the industrial impact and the job creation impact.
And y'all have a
with the
new,
team.
is it a Samsung plant that is opening up there?
Correct. Yeah, we have it's currently under construction. It's one of the biggest manufacturing facilities in the world.
Yeah.
And
Right
it's
there in
also
Taylor, Texas.
right in Taylor, Texas, and it's also with the global war on terror and technology. It's a win for the United States, and to bring that home for Taylorites specifically in Williamson County, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
That is probably leading to some interesting challenges, though, because you have a historically small town.
That's correct.
And there's some people that want new things, and there's some people that don't. And so how have y'all navigated that so far? Because the change y'all are talking about with this, because it's not just even that plant. There's probably going to be multiple industries that open up around that to support that plant.
Correct.
And so it is going to literally change the landscape of Taylor itself. How are y'all navigating that challenge of the people that maybe don't want the change? They don't want to see new culture come in and things change.
Right. Well, it's communicating, hey, this is what's going on. This is, and of course, always having, you want to listen and understand. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean,
you don't write them off just because they don't want to see change.
No, it's and is there something that is there some benefit or something that's going to help you long term by having some of this growth? What is the positive? Things are always going to change. Unfortunately, that's just the way livelihood. But you don't want to write that off. Say, oh, your concerns are, that was yesterday. But definitely listen and understand and see what the big benefit. They may have a grandchild that may have an internship with Samsung. They may have some of the cost of doing business in town may actually go down. Some of the costs for services, because there's these industrial impacts for the area. But listening and trying to understand and working together. But it's an ongoing situation.
That's one of those things you'll almost never be done with.
Never
right?
will be done.
Because the amount of change that this will start is going to go on for quite a while.
It will.
And I think when we call it historic, you're never going to look back in the future and you're always going to see this inflection point of like, here was Taylor and now here's the new Taylor.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of towns, and where I think this is really interesting, there's a lot of towns in Texas experiencing this, where there's just so much influx of industry, there's so much influx of new people. We've created a pretty good business environment here, and so it's making companies want to move here. But you got a lot of towns that are now navigating, how do we support that, and how do we bring people along and get them excited about this idea?
I agree.
And so you're not alone in that.
No.
Sure.
I totally agree with that one. Totally agree.
How many years have you? I know you've been 8.5 years in Taylor. How many years overall have you been doing public service?
Oh, my goodness. I guess I'm showing my age now. About 20 years
well,
now. Over 20 years.
You did have a birthday yesterday,
yeah,
so we got a couple decades on the career.
I got my Texas City Management Association 20-year award. So I started back in 2003, and I just wanted something, again, earlier what we talked about, just something, an adventure, something where you can, a livelihood where you can impact people positively, and something fun, and I just found local government was one way to do that. So when I got out of college, I got a degree in master's in public administration. Okay. Back then, I saw two different pathways. It was maybe you can work in a larger city and maybe get an internship and kind of work your way up, and the other option was go to a small town and just have at it, be the dog catcher, be the,
you do a little bit of everything,
little bit of everything. And so that's the adventure I set out on. And, I moved to the Texas Panhandle. I think I'd only been there a couple of times in my life, but, I learned, about, all kinds of things, and the winter weather, of course, that was always fun with the snow. And so when I come here and we see a trace, I'm like, well, I've seen some stuff that that's very fascinating as far as snow and whiteout. So
they don't really know what it is here, do they?
No, they don't cancel anything unless you get about 4 to 5 inches. So it's very.
And here
very
we cancel it when it threatens
a trace
snow.
or So I did have an employee one time. That was one of my favorite things I saw in Taylor. There was an employee that said it was 40-something degrees and it was raining. And you know how asphalt, it can shimmer with the light on it and everything. And said, oh, that's black ice out there, and
at 40
and
degrees.
we better get prepared. And I said, oh no, that's not. And so every day when it rains and it's around 40 degrees, I'd go yell at the employee, hey, we about to get black ice out there again.
Fire up the sand trucks. Here we go. That's funny. Well, I'm curious, when you got into public service, was it an eye towards, I want to be in a city management position, or was it just public service in general?
I wanted to be in city management.
Okay.
Yeah, I went in my hometown, Wichita Falls and Burnett area in North Texas. I saw some of the impacts that they did and some of the projects that they impacted, and I thought, wow, they're doing a lot of really cool stuff there, and politics is great, I mean, it's somewhat sometimes it can make some things happen, but you need some normalcy to manage some things. So I think our field has some the right balance where you're managing it, and the politicians have the major goals and the perspective of what they want to see their town turn into in the next 20 to 30 years, and we're on the end of how do we make it happen. And
well, it's interesting. You mentioned earlier the professional nature of what y'all do. Like, y'all bring a steadiness to things. You bring because I think councils, some cities have great councils, some have very chaotic councils, but I think councils overall can bring a sense of constant change and upheaval, and they can bring stress if they're not healthy. And I think the role really of that city then is we're going to be the professionals that bring us steadiness. Y'all set the direction. You tell us where to go. You get along or you don't. But we are going to bring okay, what do we do today? How do we keep the lights on? How do we keep future growth happening? And that's a really important role y'all have.
I agree.
Over the last 20 years, I'm curious, what have you had to overcome internally? Because obviously 20 years later, you're a different leader than you were 20 years ago.
That's a good.
What have you had to overcome internally to kind of grow into your role you have now?
Well, you talk about it a lot, work-life balance. That is one. You've got to be able to try to manage that and the stress, and how do you take that each and every day. I used to. I've got the achiever on the, and so I feel like I've got to do X, Y, and Z. I've got to
be successful.
I've got to be everywhere and everything, and wasn't maybe the best on delegating early in my career. And so I've learned to, you've just got to, take one day at a time. You can find a solution just about anything, but slow down, take one step at a time. Make sure that you have that work-life balance. I mean, you got to, if there's a trip you're wanting to do, you need to schedule that out. Take that trip.
Do it.
Go have those moments with your family. Those won't come again. And enjoy things. So that was one area that I definitely had to work on. And you've probably had this happen as well. But Thursday evening or Friday evening, and you're off and you're thinking about something and it's bothering you, and so how do you process that, and how do you work through that? So I've had to work on that a lot, and my wife tells me I definitely much better than I was earlier in my career with that. But
it's funny. There's this growth that happens because we were just having this conversation literally last night, and my wife described me, and she didn't mean this in a mean way. She described me as, in the early years of the kids' lives, more of a drive-by parent.
Yes.
More of a dad's always working, dad's always doing something, and he'll pop in and do some really important things, but he's not here for everything. He's not changing all the diapers. He's not, here for every second of it. And I really, that kind of hit me, and it really hurt for a second. I was like, I?
Yeah.
I asked her later after everybody left, I was like, was I really a drive-by dad? And she's like, no, you weren't. But the reality is, you took on a lot as a young man trying to provide for a family as a single income, and probably took on a little too much. And you're right, I did miss some of those key moments in their lives, and I think that's pretty natural for a lot of people. For an achiever, it's very natural, because an achiever, you see the tasks and you see the mountain and the success, and it's like, let's go climb. And so that makes a lot of sense. How have you learned to, or are you still working on setting those boundaries and honoring those and saying, no, this is our time?
I think it's one of those. It's ongoing. It never stops. Unfortunately, that's just the way reality of the world is. But for me, it's trying to set some parameters. And if someone calls and they want to talk at 6 o'clock, okay, is this an emergency or not?
Yes.
Send that quick text. Can I call you tomorrow at 8:30 instead, because I'm spending time with my family? Another one that I think is really big is giving yourself grace. I think sometimes in the field, we think we have to be perfect all the time, or it may end up in a news story, or you made a mistake and everybody knows about it. But earlier on, I wouldn't give myself grace. I'd be hard on myself, like,
for little things, right?
Little things. You're like, oh, I should have caught that, and you're a human being. You're a person. You cannot predict every single thing that happens.
Yes.
And so from each experience, you learn things. You put those new tools in your toolbox, and so when it comes up again, maybe you can take a better approach at it.
Yeah. I'm curious, because we've already actually kind of gotten into the next question, which is advice we would give people thinking about getting into public service. But I think it's interesting, this idea of slowing down, having grace for yourself, setting boundaries. These are things that we're not gifted at when we're younger.
No.
And we ultimately have to learn through pain. And I'm curious, what pain did you experience on that journey that just taught you we have to have grace, we have to slow down, we have to set boundaries? What was some examples of, oh man, I ran into that wall so hard, I had to change?
Well, I've probably like you've experienced, where you're out having a dinner with your family, and then that one thing is just bothering you, just eating away at you, and you can't put it down, and so how do you? That's one example I can think of, as because that can be very stressful and harmful for you long term,
Yes. Because it's not just contained to you, right?
Right,
You're
right.
sitting there in that mode. Your family is not sitting here going, "This is the best dinner we've ever had."
Right,
They're
right.
going, "Why is Dad pissed off?"
Yeah. I mean, and I mean that's not a moment you want to you want to remember or experience,
Yeah.
again. And I'm trying to think of anything else, but it's just in general, yeah, it's an ongoing process where you evaluate and see and understand and learn to delegate.
Yeah.
There's always time for things. If it is an emergency, you'll know. I mean, they're going to call and say,
Yes.
"Hey, 911,
Yeah.
this is happening," and then of course you'll take appropriate action. But a lot of times things can be worked through, and you can always, another philosophy I have, you can always a place, if it's not the greatest place to work, you can turn it into the best place in the world to work.
That's interesting because so let's dig into that a little bit, because I think the generation coming up, they're not going to put up with the things we put up with. Now,
Right.
We coming up put up with a lot of things that are not borderline abusive, like they cross the line into abusive.
Right.
They're not great work environments, and we put up with a lot of that for a long time because that's what you did, is you started a place and you work there until you die.
Right.
And this generation doesn't believe that. They experience something they don't like and they're out immediately. And so I love this idea that you can have a positive impact on a place, even if you're not the top leader, even if it's not a great place. And there's a line there, right? There's sometimes we don't have the capacity to do that well,
Right.
but we do have the ability to do that. And so that's a hard thing for people to navigate, to go, hey, I'm in a toxic environment. I'm dealing with a lot of bad leadership, but how do I want to choose to show up?
Right.
And so have you ever had to navigate that in your career?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
you didn't come to this philosophy just
No.
magically, right?
Oh, no. I mean, a couple, this is not Taylor, but a couple of towns I worked
Just
for.
to be clear, not Taylor.
Not Taylor. A couple of places I worked for, I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't get applicants for jobs, you couldn't,
Yes.
nobody wanted to be there, and
Yeah.
it was not the environment. But I'm a big strategic thinker, and how do you overcome that? What are ways you can do
Yes.
that to where you can change the script? And one of my towns, it was funny, people didn't want to apply there, and then later on, the neighboring town, some of their best people were applying, wanting to come work for us.
So what was the switch?
Well, just communicating. I think that's really big. Communicating, having that alignment with your council and staff. And then some of those tough, nagging problems, take them on. What are the strategies and solutions to not make them go on for forever and ever? Is there a way to try to address them?
Yeah.
And then taking a day at a time and relating with employees. Going and talking to them and listening and understanding. And I think if everybody buys into that alignment and working together, it makes it a much better environment. But it takes some catalyst in your organization to make that happen.
It takes that person that says, you know what, I can't fix the whole organization, but I can make things a little better around me.
Right.
I can make my department better. I can make my people, want to show up to work every day. I can do those things. And you get enough leaders doing that in an organization, it starts to change the entire organization.
Yeah, I
But
totally agree.
you got to have the mindset that what I do today, how I show up, matters. And I think this is ultimately the most important work y'all are going to do in public service going forward, because we are going to continue to struggle to hire if it is not, because I always describe it as a cup. And if this cup over here is full and it's what you can make in the private sector money wise, well, we can only do a portion of that. We can't do the whole cup. The rest has to be filled with that heart for service, and creating an environment that fosters that heart for service and keeps it going and keeps sustaining it. That's the work of building a great city staff. But that doesn't land on your list, does it? Like, there's no task that says, hey, go make sure all your people are thriving today. You got a million other things to do, but that's the important work.
I totally agree with that. I mean, in Taylor, that's our number one philosophy. I mean, you're only as good as the people you have working with you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're only, and our city council, they've been very focused on that. So
Yeah.
paying benefits, I mean, they're like,
Yeah.
Let's make sure that we're competitive, where they're not struggling versus another community that's paying better.
Yeah.
Let's be in the ball game, because that's only the fair thing to do. And so we're very thankful for our city council and staff are working on that.
That's challenging for small cities, right? Because you are a small city surrounded by medium and large size cities.
Yes.
So I can go 20 minutes, do the same job, and make more money.
Correct.
And so you have to be competitive at almost a higher level than you would normally have to. If y'all were 100 miles away from the metro area, you wouldn't have to be quite as competitive as you have to be here.
I totally agree with that. The western side of Williamson County,
yes,
is very much the high growth area, but and there's some cities on the eastern side that maybe they're actually, Taylor was the largest city in Williamson County from 1880 to 1980.
Okay,
and so there's some giants on the east side that are just as competitive, and so we're when I first started, that was one thing I'm really proud about. We regularly get people that would get stolen from some of the communities on other sides of the county, and now it's a little bit more of the game has shifted.
Okay,
and you're competitive, and you're taking some of their best people, and but that's just the nature of how it works, and creating a great culture, pay, and environment to where they want to be a part of it.
You got the council. If y'all can help us with the pay side, we can work on the culture piece, and together we're going to get the best people doing that.
Yeah, and it's worked out great. I mean, there's I call Taylor the Beast of the East, and it literally is the Beast of the East.
T-shirts made that say that.
Not yet, but after this, you gave me a great idea. I think we need some T-shirts. But
I feel like you're a custom T-shirt. You just give me that vibe.
For my fantasy football league, every year, pretty much, I'll go and
nailed it.
Get them a custom T-shirt. Definitely.
Yep. The Beast in the East. I
Beast
like that.
in the East.
Well, we've talked a lot about these younger folks thinking about getting into public service, and you're 2 decades in, and you have a different view than when you started. What would you tell them today if they're thinking about public service as a career?
Oh, it's worthwhile. I mean, it's a lot of fun. There's always challenges. There's always problems, and there's in anything. But I mean, again, how at the end of the day, if you can look back and go, hey, I made this town better, and I made all these other various opportunities better for residents. I mean, it's extremely impactful. I think some of the things I would tell myself also and tell them would be definitely look at your philosophy. How when I was younger in my career, I would try to emulate, hey, that city manager does this, or this one does this. Yeah. You need your own style. Yes. You need your own philosophy and ability. Yeah. So I went and read years ago. I'm a big sports guy, and I read
custom fantasy football shirts. I
fantasy football, yeah. So and I'm big on basketball. Yeah. I'm a Cowboys fan. That can be rough at times. Yeah, that's a whole other story or podcast episode. Yeah. You can learn a lot of lessons from that. But I'm also a Duke Blue Devil fan. Some people get a little confused on that one, growing up from in Texas. But I love the Leitner era of the 90s. But the thing I read this book John Wooden wrote, and it's about observation and reflections on and off the court.
Interesting.
And it's just fascinating. It's about his personal philosophy with practice, repetition. How did he and kind of in the book it says that you need to have your own philosophy of how you want to do things. Yes. So another example is Coach Carroll. He just got the Raiders position, and he was with the Seahawks for years. Prior to USC, if you look at him, he was kind of average. He was an average NFL coach. Was not very successful. Yeah. He read that book and realized he needed to develop his home style, the way he wants to do things, and how he wants to make it work. And because of that, he credits that book to his rise at USC with the national championship in Seattle, and he themes the days of the week. Like Monday is his reflection Mondays, and and he has all these goals. But I've kind of take the same approach in my journey. Like be the authentic storyteller.
Yes.
I think that's wonderful. Be the strategic thinker.
Yeah.
Be the can-do person that can, take on some of those difficult problems, and a trust builder.
Yeah. There's something really deep here, because I think when we talk about leadership styles, for instance, I always tell people your leadership style, unless you're intentional about it, is a combination of some really good things you've seen modeled for you and some really bad things you've seen modeled for you.
That's correct.
But it's once we decide I need to be who I am as a leader, I'm going to intentionally say, what is my style? I'm no longer taking and saying, well, that person was really cool, I'm going to go be like them. Because when we're not authentic, when we're trying to be something we're not, it always comes through. But when we can start to say, this is who I am as a leader, and this is how I want to do good and function, it changes everything for us, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. Yeah. I know how I want to do things. I know my philosophy.
Yeah.
And like you said, it comes across authentic, and it's truly me,
Yeah.
If I'm the hokey, goofy dad joke guy with telling a story, that's just me, that's how it is.
And you are, by the way. You're great at it.
My wife has some cringe moments, of course, when some of them, but yeah,
we wouldn't be doing our jobs if our wives weren't cringing at our jokes.
But it enables us to connect with our employees even better, and because they know who you are, that you'll listen, and they understand where you're coming from. On the trust portion of it, I think that, of course, with counsel and the public trust is a real big thing. And that's one of mine, is how can you build that bridge of trust? And I had a mayor years ago. We had to take from Amarillo a trip to Austin a couple of times, and we were at a restaurant, and he hasn't fully trusted counsel at the time, and he was still trying to figure me out. He was a newer mayor, and he saw this 7-layer piece of chocolate cake across the room, and he said, wow, I've never seen a piece of chocolate cake that large.
Yeah.
And he goes, will you eat that? Can you eat that piece of chocolate cake? And I said, sure. I'll take that challenge on right now. I'll take one for the team. So it was, I think, maybe one of the richest chocolate cake I've ever eaten in my life. But I ate the whole 7-layer, and he was so he was flabbergasted by that moment and that experience. Yeah. And it seemed from then on, it was like, well, hey, Jeff's he's a normal person, he just wants to be like, and so let's have some more conversations. And so it started that trust bond of breaking the ice of and then he got even closer with counsel as time went on. But I call it the chocolate cake accord in long story.
I love that, man. Well, a couple of things. One, I think the building the trust piece, so much of it is just you're playing a role, I'm playing a role. Let's lower those and let's just talk about human stuff.
That's
true. It's amazing how often I work with a lot of people. I work with law enforcement, for instance. Law enforcement does not want to hear from a civilian. But what I found is when I'm human in that room, they start to respond in a human way. And so we talk about our kids. We talk about the challenges of raising these little teenagers and how much we want to strangle them sometimes. And we talk about our marriages and the human side of things. What do we love? What do we not? We eat chocolate cake together, basically.
That breaks the ice. There you go.
Like it creates this connection that suddenly now we can work on the things we need to work on, because we're no longer pretending to be these I guess stories about ourselves, right? We want people to think this about us, versus just, no, I'm a human, you're a human. Let's eat some cake and let's see what happens.
Let's enjoy it. And the adventure. We talked about that earlier with folks, and it's it's enjoyable. I mean, the adventures and things you'll see and do. You just jogged my memory on another quick story, so if I get an opportunity to tell back to back, I've got to take it. But giving yourself grace and mistakes and or funny moments. This is one I had in Henrietta, Texas. I was city manager there about 15 years ago. Okay, and they have this annual Pioneer Reunion Days. It pretty much shuts the whole county down. Oh, wow. And Henrietta is the county seat, and they have a very large parade that with moving floats. I mean, they really go all out for this.
Yeah.
And the way it works is the city is the lead float.
Okay.
And so they get the Shriners from Wichita Falls. They bring in these older Cadillacs from the 70s, and they give the ride for the mayor and city manager and all the staff. And I think this was the first time I ever rode in this particular parade. But so I get in. So the mayor pro tem and we get in the car, and we're all excited. This is our first time being in this parade. And we get up to the first turn before the start of the parade, and the car dies. And I don't know about you, but I mean, it's like, how many times does this happen? Cars that are in parades die and the people in them. But anyway, the driver was like, "Oh, it's nothing. It's just the engine. It's just an older. I just need to go and get it a tune-up." And so we're like, "Oh, okay." And it just starts right back up, and then we go on down, and we're in the main part of the parade, probably a couple thousand people looking at us, and there's an announcer there announcing the parade. And I don't know if you remember back then in like 2010, there was a lot of government, they called it government bailouts, where the government was having to assist. And so anyway, right about that moment that they announced our float, the car died again. And we look, and we're trying to figure out what's wrong with the car. Well, the driver didn't put any gas in the car. I mean, that's what. So we get out, and we're pushing this Cadillac, and the announcer sees this and says, "Look at that! The government's already bailing out," and then I'm pushing this car, and I'll never forget this moment. And I look over in probably the peak amount of people in the crowd, and I look, and there's my mom, and she's just slapping her leg and laughing the whole time at her son. And you have moments like that. Unfortunately, I think I've had
a little humbling, isn't it?
A little humbling. I've had 2 or 3 incidents with parade vehicles where they've died, and so that's a whole nother story.
You gotta learn the lesson. Don't get in the parades.
I may have to avoid that. Together. Yeah, I don't know. I try to get in the newer vehicles now just to make sure.
To be sure. You got some trauma there around parades.
Yeah, parades.
Don't you?
Yeah.
That is really funny, man. There are those moments, I'm a city manager, and now I'm out here pushing a car in front of
pushing the car, and
I'm
getting us through the parade. Yeah, we pushed that Cadillac off, mistakes happen. Even people forgetting to fill the parade float with gasoline.
That's really funny. And you got a choice there. You can get mad, or you can just get out and push the car.
You can. You can.
I think there's something interesting about your take on things, because you were talking about the authenticity of you and being the storyteller and being the guy. And it was funny in the retreat I did for your team last year, getting to know everybody. And that was the thing that kept coming up is, boy, Jeff's a storyteller, and they're great, but you better have time to talk to him.
Yeah.
You better be right back. But it was never in a, God, Jeff's such a pain. It was in this authentic, like, Jeff's really good, because I think through your storytelling, people experience the love and the care that you have for them and for the team, and that's who you are authentically. It's not a role you play,
right? It's not a role, and it's when I'm telling a story, it's trying to relate to them, or it's trying to give an example of whatever situation we're experiencing or going through, and I think it helps. Humanize, like we were talking earlier, humanize the situation. I did. So we got a new communications director, and he's not a sports guy, and so I've been working on him every little bit. And so one of the first ones I pulled on him was, do you know what the Jordan rules are? And then there's a meaning behind the Jordan rules, of course, with what happened to Michael Jordan back in the late 80s and 90s, but and so I gave him the lesson on that and the story behind it, what it leads to work. And then a few days later, I said, okay, now who are the bad boys again, and what were the Jordan rules? And you could see the wheels turning a little bit. So,
That's funny. I think there's this, when you get into really any kind of leadership, there is that, who am I going to be, and what does authenticity look like for me? And that's the as you've navigated that, you really grow into kind of who you are. Because I think about how I lead today versus how I led a decade ago. Those are 2 different human beings, and some of the base elements were there, but I was just a different person, because I think I was less confident just being me.
Yeah,
just saying this is who I am, this is how I'm designed, and
own
I'm
it,
bring the strength.
own
Yeah.
it. That's who
Own
you
it.
are.
Yes.
Yeah, own it
Yeah.
and believe it and live it. And
Yeah.
and I've had situations also where, where both sides are kind of dug in, and it's very difficult.
Yeah. Did you bring chocolate cake to the table?
No, that's a good idea. Maybe I should next time.
I've got a story for you. It's called the chocolate cake
Accord. Yeah, that might work in general. That's another. If all else fails,
you
that's
need to find you a local bake shop and just have them on call. Be
yeah,
like,
say,
emergency
come on
chocolate
in,
cake.
come on down. I need some help here. But because they've had some of those previous interactions on with me or with that someone that's a little bit more of that authentic type or storyteller type, they'll seem to try to give you the benefit of the doubt and try to find, is there a way we can work this out or find a solution to this situation? Because some of those can be uncomfortable, but I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to find a commonality solution.
Yeah, I think there's something to when you show up authentically as a leader. It's funny. I was working with a city, and the city manager loves to go. Just public works crews are out working on a street. Loves to just go talk to them. And connect with them and understand what they're doing and what are their challenges. And every time that happens, the public works crew is just like, can you believe the city manager came to see us?
Oh, yeah.
Can you believe they came down to interact with us? And because that city manager is very authentic in who they are, that connection happens. And I find it fascinating. This is the conversation we're having because you are an Enneagram 3, an achiever. Mm-hmm. And achievers, when they're really healthy, they are this self-accepting, authentic person. And when they're just average, they're very inauthentic. They're very put the mask on to be successful, to appear successful. So the fact that you and I are even having this conversation tells me you're doing really well, which is exciting
thank
for me.
you.
I like
that. That's great.
You're very healthy 3. One of the things we really dig into, and part of the reason we're doing this project in the first place, is we need to create a more sustainable future for our teams. They need to be able to thrive in order for the city to thrive. Mm-hmm. Thrive through change even. Y'all are going through this massive change. What do we need to rethink as cities in order to help our people thrive better in the future?
Well, I think what you were just talking about, I think that leads into it. We got to listen. That's one thing. Listen. Go and take time. There's always stuff on your to-do list. There's always things that are happening. What are some ways you can share and listen? I know in Tigler we have regularly we'll go out to departments or groups and here, hey, tell us about things going on. And then we'll share also updates of things going on in the city because then they can be advocates for what's going on. They need peace of mind,
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they, if somebody asks them a question and then maybe they've heard a little bit. Oh, the city manager or deputy city manager told me this, or they may need peace of mind. Is that one little thing I'm doing? How impactful is that really? So definitely listening and understanding and where they're coming from also on pay, benefits. We need to understand that. I remember earlier in my career, it was frustrating on like housing, for example. That I've seen this in some of these recruitments even today where there'll be one house, and then the available, and then the pay is not in that 30% range of what is expected. So being fair on pay, benefits, making sure, being innovative. I think we got to listen and hey, what are there's things with AI and new programs always coming out. What are we doing to not work harder but work smarter together? A team. And then educating. I think we got to have some ability where our employees, they can, either classes. I've heard you've done some conferences even, but how can we help them continue to grow as leaders and then mentor them? I mean, sometimes, you need to identify those folks in your organization and to be kind of the next catalyst that's going to keep the cog moving forward and working together. But those are some of my outlets on it.
The first thing you brought up there is that staying connected with people. I think is really important because we think about what do we need to change in order to be sustainable, and it's easy to go to these big, broad, like we need this giant new initiative, and we don't know how we're going to fund it to take care of our people. But really, it can be as simple as I'm going to go intentionally connect with my people.
That's it.
And then no matter what's happening, whether it's we're going to connect to say, hey guys, by the way, you're getting a pay raise this year, or it's, hey guys, we can't do a pay raise this year, and here's why, and here's what our plan is in the future. As long as that connection is there and there's open communication, you hear them, you connect with them, either way, they're going to understand. And then they may not like it, but they're more likely to say, okay, you know what? It's okay. I understand. Thank you for bringing that to me.
Right.
Let's go get back to work.
Yeah. Right.
And that's more likely to happen when that connection is there. And that's something that is available to us all the time. It doesn't require more funding. It doesn't require more of anything except the intentionality to say, the most important thing I can do right now is go connect with my people. Is that happening on a regular basis? And that's the hard work, because until there's a fire over there, we may not go over there and deal with it. But we can prevent a lot of that just with that ongoing connection. Is that something over the years that you have, I would imagine being a people person, it's a little easier for you, right? Like you're not hiding in your office all day. No. You're going out and connecting. And so that's an easy practice for you, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Yeah. With our parks employee, I'll go out and, hey, I'm going to go buy the donuts. Come by, let's go talk. Yeah. Sometimes when I go by there, we have a particular guy there that he's an Eagles fan, and so I know I'm going to get being a Cowboys fan. I'm going to hear it probably for a good.
You're going to be lucky if you don't get punched in the mouth.
Yeah. But he loves to send me a text or something. Hey, you see my team now? They're in the Super Bowl coming up. But it's just one of those things where you break the ice with them, go talk to them, learn who they are. Just take the time. Yeah. I find that there is time in the office as well, but go where they are and what they're experiencing, and you just never know what a conversation on something minor might end up being a solution for something big, or it could give them grace and empathy when they're having that tough or bad day or experience. And so,
that makes a huge difference. And I'm seeing a correlation between, when we're raising families, and there's always another work emergency, and there always will. And eventually we have to say, hold on, we're going to put these emergencies on pause. We're going to do family stuff, because this is not going to last forever. I think the same is kind of true when we go see our employees. Like there's always going to be more tasks. But if we don't put that on pause, at least temporarily say, you know what, I'm going to go connect with my people. If we let that, it's kind of the same thing. Like eventually we're going to look up and those people are going to be gone, in the same way our kids are eventually going to leave. And so I think there's a real correlation there.
I totally agree. I mean, if you're not spending time with them, if you're not communicating, listening, having one-on-one meetings with your directors, I'll have one-on-ones with them, and then I'll also have I have a group meeting with them as well, and then I'll go out and be with their staff, but they get more of that connection, they that authenticity that you want, and then. They may be having problems, but they realize they got a teammate to go into battle with that's gonna help them, guide them to a solution.
I love that.
When you're alone by yourself, it feels very daunting, or you don't get that mentoring, or you don't. So some people may go, well, that's the time to move on or go someplace else. But I've seen now in my career, if you set the table right, a lot of times now the only way they'll leave is if it's just one of those dream jobs they thought would never come open, ever.
Yeah.
So,
and you're happy for them, but they're not.
You are.
They're not leaving because they're discontent.
Right.
They know they're supported and cared for, and I think connection has been an interesting theme for this episode. And I'm noticing with you that connection happens through stories and it happens through baked goods. Because I heard about taking donuts to the parks department.
Oh, that's another theme. I didn't think about that. The secret to my success is Mrs. Bear's bread and all of her family and friends.
Absolutely. I think your 1-2 punch is a good story and something sweet to eat. And that works out really well for you. Jeff, man, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this. I cannot wait for people to see this. They're going to get so much value out of this, and probably eat some cake too, is my guess.
Oh, well. Make sure to go work out afterwards, a couple of times. So that's another lesson that I've learned. Make sure to go take care of yourself by working out.
Yes,
so
because then you can eat more cake.
Then you can eat more cake as much as you want.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. You might also like our other podcast, The Leader Lab. You can find it on all the major podcast platforms and on YouTube. Just search for The Leader Lab. Each episode is under 10 minutes. It's just a quick thought to help you level up your leadership. You'll also find all the other leadership content we are putting out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just search for @ForwardPartner.